Hello. Hello, I'm Adam Sifke. You may remember me as your phys ed teacher at Baton Elementary School, or possibly ICS. I'm going to read to you Chapter 11, Hugh Winkleman. This is shaping up into the greatest school year ever. True, my grades were no better than usual, straight A's. I still couldn't climb the ropes in gym. I was laying waste to the competition in chess club, but that always happened. I wasn't popular or even borderline acceptable. But I had something going for me, and that was pure gold. I was anonymous. That may not sound like much, but to me, it was my birthday, Christmas, and 4th of July all wrapped into one. No longer did I feel the ridiculing eyes boring into me as I walked the halls of C Average. Those eyes bored elsewhere. No longer did I have to watch my step for the feet that would trip or kick me. Those feet were otherwise engaged. I could barely remember my last wedgie, and it was all thanks to Cap Anderson. I liked Cap, really, I did. But I'd be less than honest if I didn't admit that the best thing about him was the fact that he took the heat off me. I was allowed to live because the pack was in full cry after him. I was so happy, but also guilty for being happy. And the happier I got, the more guilt spoiled my happiness. Of all the gruff I'd taken from Zach Powers over the years, this had to be the worst. That I was feeling bad for something he was doing. My only crime was benefiting from it. It wasn't like I could have helped Cap. If I had the power to control Zach, Lena, Daryl, and those vipers, then I wouldn't be the victim. Victims have no power. That's what makes us victims. Anyways, this had gone far beyond just Zach's crew. It was the Luke Simard thing all over again, a wide scaled war of little attacks on Cap. The school bus was the bloodiest battlefield. In the building itself, there was a degree of order because there were teachers around. But on the bus, the only authority was the driver, Mr. Rodrigo, and he wasn't exactly the kind of deputy you listen to. He was older and standoffish. He kept his eyes on the road because if he checked the mirror, he might see something. We could have held a luau on that bus with a pig roast and hula dancers, and he wouldn't have been none the wiser. The first projectile came sailing up the aisle, spinning like a monarch miniature torch. The Winklepin Encyclopedia of Bullying Techniques identified it instantly. A bunch of jerks in the back were flicking lit matches at Cap. I brushed it off. I brushed it from the seat, genuinely alarmed. This may have been an issue as usual in my life, but I had short hair. Cap's flyaway mop was a forest fire waiting to happen. Another flickering shot bounced off the armrest and extinguished itself on the floor. Cap, I whispered urgently. Duck. I looked up, mystified. Why? And at that very instant, Mr. Rodrigo let out a loud groan, clutched his chest, and toppled out of his seat. The raucous clamor of the bus died as if someone had pulled the plug. It was Mr. Rodrigo having a heart attack. We were so frozen with shock, nobody noticed that the bus was moving, inching forward into oncoming traffic. Hey! Cap shoved me out of the way and hit the floor running. He leaped over Mr. Rodrigo, still form, landed on the driver's seat, stomping on the accelerator with a roar of the big motor. The bus lurched through the intersection, missing a dump truck by inches. Where's the hospital? Cap barked over his shoulders. We all sat there like dummies, scared out of our wits. The hospital, Cap repeated. Now. Suddenly, Naomi was sprinting up the aisle. Turn here. It took all Cap's wingspans to move the huge steering wheel, swinging the bus into a tight right and speeding off down the street. I found my voice at last. But Cap, you can't drive a bus, which was maybe the stupidest remark that could have been made, because that's exactly what he was doing. He shifted gears and we picked up speed. What a sight we must have been. A giant speeding yellow school bus weaving in and out of traffic, horn blasting. Turn left, bawled Naomi. Cap heaved the wheel and the front tires bounced over a low concrete median, jostling passengers and rattling windows. A painful screech of metal on the cement raked our ears as the chassis bottomed out. I thought we were hung up for sure, but the bus sprang forward and jolted back onto the road. I scrambled on all fours down the aisle, maneuvering around the kids who'd been tossed out of their seats. Mr. Rodrigo's face was pale, but his chest was moving up and down. He's still breathing, I called to Cap. All at once, the radio burst to life. Base to 41, crackled the dispatcher's voice. Come in, 41. Cap looked at the set as if he'd never seen one in his life, which he probably hadn't. I reached around him and took a hold of the microphone. Hello? Rodrigo, is that you? We just got a report that you're way off course and driving erratically. What's going on? Uh, Mr. Rodrigo can't come to the phone, I began. Who is this? The dispatcher demanded. Hugh Winkleman? Who? A passenger. Mr. Rodrigo's unconscious. We think he might be having a heart attack. Who's driving the bus? I hesitated. Capricorn Anderson. Stop right there, the voice ordered. We'll send an ambulance for the driver. No, Cap told me, but the dispatcher said, we have to get to the hospital, he interrupted. There's no time to wait for an ambulance. I spoke into the microphone. He says no. He can't say no, the man exploded. He's endangering the lives of everybody on board. Cap glanced at the radio in annoyance. Does this have an off button? It's very distracting. Uh, Gotta go. Bye. I cut the power to the set. To Cap, I wheezed. You sure you know what you're doing? Rain says you always know what you're doing when you're doing the right thing. About 6 seconds later, we heard the sirens. Some kid in the last road made an identification. Cops! By the time I got back there, 2 police cruisers were on our tail, lights flashing. One of them activated the outside speaker. Pull over to the side of the road. You better do it, Cap, I called. The cops are chasing us. His expression was hidden behind all the hair, but he crouched lower over the wheel. It was a wordless statement. It would have taken an M1 tank to stop us now. I hope this rain was a reliable source. If Cap was just talking about wet weather, we were all up a creek without a paddle. As we barreled across the town in the direction of the hospital, the line of police cars continued to grow until we were leading a parade of 7 black and whites and at least a couple unmarked vehicles. The kids on board were totally crowded, except for the engine noise and Naomi shouting directions. There was an utter silence. We had to be the best behaved busload of kids in the history of C Average Middle School. I would have enjoyed the sight of so many people who had terrorized me being terrorized themselves, except that I was twice as scared as they were. By the time we pulled into the entrance of the Metro East Medical Center, we looked like a scene from Thelma and Louise, with half of the police department strung out in back of us in pursuit, sirens blaring. I could see nurses and paramedics diving out of the way as the bus rocketed up the drive to the emergency. Cap stomped on the brakes and we squealed to a halt behind a parked ambulance. A whole lot of cruisers surrounded us on all sides. The hospital guys were angry at first, but as soon as they caught a glimpse of Mr. Rodrigo, they were all business. The fallen driver was rushed in the building on a stretcher. No sooner had the automatic doors swallowed him than the first officer stomped up the stairs of the bus. You're in a lot of trouble, kid. The police made Cap lie face down in the aisle while they cuffed his hands behind his back. It was like something out of an episode of Cops. They were treating him like a criminal, which I guess a school bus hijacker technically was. We watched in awe as they hauled him roughly to his feet and marched him out to a squad car. Naomi was the first to speak up. Cap didn't do anything wrong. He was just trying to save Mr. Rodrigo. The stunned passengers came alive at last. It started off as rumbling of discontent, bubbling over into a chorus of outrage on Cap's behalf. Quit pushing the guy around. He's a hero. He didn't hit anything. The arresting officer wasn't buying it. Quiet, he bellowed. Now listen, I'm sending a patrolman into the... Sorry about that. I'm sending a patrolman into the drive the bus back to school. I don't want to hear a peep out of any of you in the meantime. A door slammed as Cap was locked in the back of the cruiser. It was a terrible moment, and doubly terrible for me, because I wasn't proud of what was going on. It was in my head just then. Cap had just been arrested at gunpoint. Mr. Rodrigo was in danger of his life. And what was I thinking about? That if Cap went to jail, I would be back in the business as number one punching bag at C Average Middle School. I was a worm, but at least I had the strength of character to be ashamed of it. There's chapter 11. Enjoy the rest of the book.